oil, gold, nuclear energy, diamonds. These are the oldest and the most commodifiable raw materials known to humanity. The raw materials that empires have been built on, wars have been fought over. Or maybe I just lied to you. What if I told you that they aren't? What if I told you that they aren't? What if I told you that I could sell you something better? What if I could sell you my raw humanity and make us both billions? Not right now. that is not that video, and it'll never be that channel, but I genuinely hope that I've gotten you sufficiently hooked without any appeal to that side of things, because today we're going to talk about the oldest and the dirtiest trade in the book, prostitution. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, I'm not here to bore you about ancient Mesopotamian brothels or Victorian bordellos, although the history and the stories I've read about those are absolutely fascinating, and I would absolutely love to. That isn't this particular video's interrogation. I'm speaking about the modern day digital brothel, where instead of indulging themselves under, say, the shadow of night, sterile anonymity means that things like paywalls and subscription services grant you the privilege that, hey, it is very possible that no one will know who you are for an indulgence that many, let's be honest, are too afraid to admit that they can't get legitimately. See, when someone hates you, and I mean truly hates you in the most authentic expression of the word, your humanity becomes expendable to the exigency that the monetary product, that the sexual product of exploiting it feeds their narcissistic supply. And this is precisely where I'm seeing the frustration around this entire conversation start and end. The victim. I am not asking this question sarcastically or ironically. Who is the victim? Who amidst this entire transaction can claim innocence? See, when you honor, and just stay with me, right? I know I tend to go on tangents, but today I actually have a consistent, I think I actually have a consistent stream of thought. So when you honor a person's autonomy to not dehumanize another but themselves, and you willingly participate in that algophilic endeavor under the comfort that they've afforded you their consent, have any of the parties really done anything wrong? Or at the very least, if there is any accountability to be inferred, can we diminish it? And I just know, especially so with this conversation and what I've been seeing online, we've struck a nerve here, because if the commodity of interest were anything but flesh, the moral outrage would erupt practically like wildfire. Okay, let me give you an example. So imagine this, right? Again, stay with me. An elderly woman volunteers herself to be punched in the face over and over and over by a faceless mob of participants. She consents. Actually, scratch that. She insists. The faceless mob lines up, you guys, knuckles cracked, eager to take a swing, and of course, as we know, they do. Every single one of them. And some of them even pay to have the opportunity to replay the evidence again and again and again, because as we know, there's just, I don't know, there's something that they're getting out of this. It is for many very entertaining, intriguing, and fascinating to see play out on the public stage. But something for whatever reason feels ignominious about this spectacle. Something feels off, because consent at the end of the day does not alchemize depravity to decency. And yet I think, you guys, this is exactly what we are seeing unfolding right now, except as I will try my very best to defend today, we are not reacting to the beginning of the story. We are actually reacting to the climax. A climax that is shocking, that is grotesque, and meticulously crafted by a narrative of victimhood and complicity that, unfortunately, I think began a very, very long time ago. Hi, if you don't know me, my name is Catherine, but if you do know me, you know that I do not like wasting time. And so I just want to start off by saying that for fear of sort of recycling the same sentiments we've heard about the story, I really did not want to talk about this. But then last night I was scrolling, I was honestly just thinking about things, and I noticed something. I noticed a few disturbing consistencies that nobody really seems to be picking up on. It's a little bit frightening. It is quite disconcerting, but if you are watching, and obviously if you care, as usual, I want your thoughts. Here's the fascinating, the mysterious, and the interesting thing about history is that it tends to repeat itself with all the subtlety of let's be honest, of a brick to the face. And here we are at what I believe is the zenith of a very long, a very disturbing ideological progression. Why does it feel so extreme? Simple, because it is. One particular consistency with history, not in not in relation to the story, but in relation to ideology. When an ideology reaches its terminal point, like I said, it isn't subtle about its arrival. It practically sets itself on fire and demands that we watch. And like all tragedies, it tends to start where it always starts, with the victim. Women have been history's most, I think, convenient targets of sexual violation. A sort of low-hanging fruit across millennia. Women, children, young boys, an equal opportunity tragedy. But let's be honest, when we flip through, in my opinion, a particularly grim historical ledger of prostitution, again, women by far are the main commodity. It is not a moral commentary, it is not my moral imposition. I think in many ways, it is just biology. Men with their anatomical and physical advantages have always been able to overpower women when brute strength was the currency of the day. And again, being honest, it kind of always has been. Ironically, women have also been the least discussed and the most pivotal figures in my argument in perpetuating this grim transaction. They are not just the victims, they also tend to be the facilitators in this entire world. And this is a trend that I have addressed I did address it in a very old video. It has haunted me for a long time, and essentially what it is the omnipresence of the proverbial madame. She is at the right hand of the beast, and she is everywhere. And mark my words when I say that she undeniably hates you. She probably hates men too, but especially she hates women, young women, because they possess the one thing that she no longer can in this narrative, in this hypothetical narrative: innocence. She loathes their blamelessness, their moral clarity, their value, all the things that she lost when the not so nebulous patriarchy of 200 years ago chewed her up and spat her out. The patriarchy in modern times, I think, has diminished. The influence of its hand has definitely been vitiated in some way, but that's not this discussion. These are women with no purpose beyond ingratiating their victimhood in some way. And let's be honest, they have been victimized in some way, specifically by men who have abused them. But like I said, their main purpose, their main focus in life is ingratiating their victimhood under the lie of some autonomous empowerment, and so they victimize their daughters. They tend to hate their daughters. They despise the generation's daughters in both an immediate and overarching historical sense. Let's talk about controlling men. Actually, scratch that. Let's talk bigger. If you wanted to dominate an entire generation, hypothetically, of course, for research purposes only, you would only need 2 steps in my personal estimation. Not that I would actually do it. I wouldn't, okay? Just putting that out there, for legal reasons, but stay with me. Stay with me. If I were to do it, this is what I would do. 1, make them purposeless, and 2, make them addicted. 2 moves. That's it. Because here's the thing, when people lack purpose, they become desperate. And desperation makes a human being, a vulnerable human being for that matter, extremely pliable. Now, pair that desperation with addiction, and congratulations, you've just created for yourself a malleable society. But now, to really set things in the hypothetical, historical narrative that I'm telling you, we need to introduce the most addictive and powerful currency to ever exist. We have sociologist Emil Durkheim to thank for this cheat sheet, because he gave us the concept of anomie, a state of normlessness where society's structures erode, leaving individuals unmoored, disoriented, and vulnerable. Anomie turns people into blank canvases ripe for exploitation. And in aimless flailing, they cling to the one thing that still feels like purpose, the one thing that sort of numbs the emptiness. Now, if it wasn't obvious already, I've said it many times before, but I still get people asking me, I'm not from America, I'm not from the UK, but even I remember when the West was sort of seen as a poster child for stability, predictable in its expressions, its security, and its moral compass. You may not have agreed with it all the time. I know my family never did, definitely did not, but you could rely on it. It is no secret that even when I look at Western headlines, that's just not the case anymore. The West is quote unquote crumbling. And why? Because I think the structures that once upon a time anchored its stability, its predictability, its order, its steady pathways to success, the great American dream, these pathways are disintegrating before our eyes. If you want to know exactly where we are in this completely hypothetical storyline, think the 2009 stock market crash. Now, to put this into perspective, let's look back. Because, like I said in the beginning, history loves a good recurring theme. I think we often forget in the 21st century that that there was a very significant gap, and this was a gap in the timeline spanning decades, if not consisting of active warfare then recovery, where men had two very clearly defined purposes: war and family. Mostly war, though. If we're being completely honest, it was horrific, it was tragic, but it was purpose. And purpose rather, no matter how bloody, has a very strange way of anchoring people. I've been watching this this TikTok trend recently, men basically just talking about their primal need to bleed out in the snow. I find it so strange. I find it so perplexing, but at the same time, I find it bizarrely endearing. It reminds me, actually, it strikes me as almost like another rendition of that whole Roman Empire meme fixation. But when I think more about this, because obviously I had to think about the psychology behind this, otherwise I wouldn't be myself if I didn't. But it's actually not all that mysterious.
I see a lot of these memes where it's like the masculine urge to bleed out here after a battle. I never got it. I thought about depression. I'm like, why are you guys talking about that? But then I came out to the middle of the state park, and I had the most masculine urge to bleed out facing this lake. While like my wife rides off on her valiant steed. It just, let me try it out. This is what I view. For Emily.
I think about it too. My fixations tend to land there too, but for completely different reasons. And that's just because my taste in books has always leaned to the more brutal, older, high fantasy. Those are just the books that I grew up on. Stories of strategy and politics and war. And I think I fell in love with these books because at their core, for people, they embody camaraderie, sacrifice, and sacred duty. Concepts that, frankly, we don't see so much anymore. And that's simply because I think our concerns as a generation have changed. The point I'm making, because I always do have a point, is that the men in those eras had a clarity of purpose that was undeniable. It was an unfortunate purpose because, honestly, you are delusional if you think that war is good for any society. But at the end of the day, that purpose was undeniable. They wanted to fight for something beyond, just making tons of money. They wanted to fight for their families, for their children. And they fought because those things were actually genuinely worth fighting for, worth dying for even. And every ounce of effort that a man gave was appreciated, and not just in a superfluous transactional way, but in a distinct, in a sacred, and in a uniquely human way. That sacredness was carved out for every man. We don't have that anymore. What we have now is men who are addicted, underutilized, depressed, sat in their parents' basements, and as we are currently seeing, borderline. What we are having now is men who are very easily controllable by certain desperation, certain addiction, and certain dissatisfaction. I'm sure you now too can guess at which point exactly in the story, in this, again, completely hypothetical narrative, that we are. Men, I hate to say it, but your basal desires tend to be your most vulnerable point. And I want to make it explicitly clear, it is not true of all men. But when I look at this story as a person with honestly, as a nobody on the internet with common sense, that vulnerability is the one that glares at me. They are your Achilles heel, and in the absence of purpose, whether you like it or not, those desires and dissatisfactions become the easiest way to control you. Lily Phillips crunched the numbers, and our girl crunched them so well, in fact, that she could stake her entire lifelong financial stability on the certainty that 100 strangers would sleep with her and thousands more would pay to watch it on loop, replayed over and over and over again until they could finally scratch the itch. But what is the itch exactly? The itch is an idea that I appreciate that some of you might actually be quite familiar with. It's called jouissance, and if you're not, psychoanalytic theory is just not your thing, it's fine. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to leave here on the same page. I'm going to explain it to you. Jouissance is the masochistic, euphoric pleasure of annihilation. That intoxicating, self-destructive bliss of pushing something, even yourself, to the absolute breaking point. Damn the consequences. It is the pleasure of ruin. It is the pleasure of watching yourself burn. Of course, it is often sexual in nature. How could it not be? And make no mistake, we are watching, sadly, this destruction unfold in real time. Welcome to the modern digital brothel. Welcome, indeed, to OnlyFans. And welcome, of course, to our beloved Lily Phillips. I am not going to bore you with a story half the internet already knows, but because as you guys know, I am practically allergic to leaving anyone in the dark, I'm just going to relate to you the Cliff Notes version. The Lily Phillips controversy erupted after YouTuber Josh Peters released a 47-minute documentary featuring the 23-year-old OnlyFans creator Lily Phillips. She set out to sleep with 100 men in 24 hours as a stunt for her OnlyFans page. Lily reportedly plans an even riskier follow-up, attempting to sleep with 1,000 men in 24 hours, an act that, as we all appreciate, as you know, those of us with common sense appreciate, will most likely. Here's what I see when I look at her story and all other ones of similar ilk. I see the madame. She is there, and she is lurking at the heart of it all. She was Epstein's Ghislaine. She was Diddy's fill in the blank, because I do not want to get sued. And in her most sanitized, approachable form, she is the woman selling her daughter's body for financial and social compensation. She is a very palatable and endearing Kris Jenner. She is. And so isn't it both fascinating and painfully predictable that Lily Phillips' financial manager is her own mother? For women, but especially so for the women of historical past who have exploited their children, jouissance is a vengeful, insatiable fuel, an intoxicating validation of their autonomy and, most frighteningly, their envy. And no, I don't just mean maternal envy, I quite literally mean existential envy. The envy of what they've lost and what they will never regain. I think when a woman sells the innocence of her own generation, if not, you know, the generations to come, jouissance manifests as a grotesque search to validate her victimhood. Because as we know and as we appreciate, it's not always just women. They exploit anything they are envious of or jealous of. Anything that has what they don't. But not for any intrinsic virtue in dismantling patriarchy, but because in reframing the ideological structure of an entire generation, she removes stability, she removes order, and she creates all on her own the increasingly normless storm we see in the West today. She creates anomie. We are rife as a generation with so many mental health issues, it is scary. She eliminates all of the spaces where men might have been useful, but especially so to women, not because she values them, but because, like I said, she despises them so much that she would much rather break them. And she knows exactly how to do it. Strip them of their purpose, feed them their addictions, and watch them crumble. You build, you invest, and you secure an empire of that feeds on depraved fantasies on both ends. See, going all the way back, remember in the beginning when I said, when I talked about what it means when someone genuinely hates you. When you hate someone, you strip them of their potential for purpose, of a purpose that just might threaten your autonomy, because you so severely despise them, knowing that they're giving into certain addictions will certainly break them. And so the modern day digital brothel must necessarily exploit the sexual appetites of men, because if it wasn't obvious enough, that is how we control you. Not just men though, that is how you control anybody with an elevated sexual appetite. With shame, because yes, you are most certainly complicit in something unfortunate in this world. You see, my theory is that anomie is bad, but jouissance is worse. For men, jouissance is a numbing sedative for their anxiety in the increasing instability of a culture that in no way guarantees their success. When a man, as we saw in that documentary, right, joins a line of 100, a line of 1,000, when he reduces himself to an animalistic herd member, he is no longer a man of meaning, a man of vision, a man of substance. He is an automaton, driven by base desires that aren't even his anymore. They belong to the industries, the systems, and the women who profit off his compliance. So clearly, jouissance operates in two dimensions, both for women and for men too. But its terrifying power, and hear me out, lies in its ability to erode the collective moral conscience. The act itself becomes a ritualistic collective exercise in moral erosion, and I'll show you why. It's as if once a human, right, consents to the lie that they are subhuman, it suddenly becomes acceptable to treat them as such. So long, of course, as you acknowledge their autonomy in believing that lie. It's okay as it is in some pretty disturbing circles said, it's okay to destroy someone who wants to be destroyed, to indulge their basest instincts, but in doing that, you degrade not only them, but I think yourself as well, and the moral frameworks that tether you to any sense of humanity. This is a collective, irreparable abdication of personal responsibility. And here is the point of the video where I stop pulling punches. I guess this is just a warning that for the latter part of this discussion, whatever this is, because this is clearly not like one of my traditional analyses. Point is, I'm not going to be soft in what I think, because I want to make my opinion quite explicit, because I want genuinely people, disagreeers, agreeers, anyone who has intelligent sentiments about the topic to be able to engage with the substance of what I'm saying. And you can't do that if you don't know exactly what I think. So yeah, just a warning. Here we go. The following is completely my opinion. And my opinion is that Lily Phillips is not honest. My opinion is that Lily Phillips lies. She lies constantly throughout that entire documentary. Men ask her repeatedly if she's sure, if she enjoys it. And Lily Phillips sells her story. She sells her consent like, quite frankly, like it is a performance. But here's the truth. By her own admission, she cannot even remember how many, well, rather, she said that she wouldn't have been able to remember how many people she'd slept with unless someone were counting for her. And this is not because she is lying, like I've heard many observers like Pearl Davis accuse her of. It is because, like she explicitly stated, she had dissociated. Now, my question to Lily and anybody else who claims that they find great enjoyment from something like this, my question is, why must you dissociate when the men don't? Because dissociation in overwhelming contexts of violation is a trauma response. That, by the way, that is not my opinion. That is science. You don't dissociate from something you enjoy. You dissociate from something that is too traumatic to endure. Yet people buy it when she says, I enjoy it, it makes me happy. But she's so obviously lying, and her admission of dissociation is the most damning evidence of her awareness for her own trauma. She has to numb herself just to survive it. Here's the thing, when you enjoy something genuinely, at the end of the day, you want to feel it. You want to register every sensation of that experience. But Lily Phillips, she has to leave her own body. She couldn't endure what was happening to her. That, to me, that is diagnostic of not joy, but survival. But let me ask you something that I've been wondering for a long time. When somebody welcomes, when somebody welcomes a crime upon themselves, does that act seize them to be a crime? If a person is degraded enough, run through enough, do they then become an excusable sacrifice to the service of your sexual appetite? And here is where I leave you with perhaps the most disturbing warning of all, the automaton effect. The so-called matrix thrives, and yes, we are talking about the matrix. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't know, maybe I am in some ways. I'm a conspiracy theorist with a seatbelt, and that seatbelt is common sense. It thrives when not just men, not just women, but people are distracted from their own potential, from their own purpose. The pursuit of shallow pleasure through does not just degrade you morally, but it actually weakens you. It weakens your resolve, your ambition, and your independence. It stops you from thinking straight. A population, at the end of the day, that is addicted to distraction, to external validation, and to indulgence is, number one, easier to control, number two, less creative and focused, and number three, more dependent on the systems that exploit them. That is the ultimate mechanism of control. Gosh. Guys, I actually feel like a villain. I'm just spilling out the thoughts that keep me up at night, that keep me up at 2 a.m. for free, because this truly is such a cathartic release of what's going on inside. So I just feel like necessary to. I just feel the need to make it clear that I'm not recruited by, I don't know, by the deep state. There's nothing going on here. Anyway, the ultimate rebellion, being serious now, against any controlling force, like the Matrix, like whatever it is that you are just inherently afraid of. The ultimate rebellion is mastery of self. People who are addicted, but especially so with pertinence to this story, men who see through the veil of manipulation can take back their time, take back their money, and take back their attention and their common sense. And I genuinely hope I live long enough to see that day, to see that happen, amongst other things. I don't know. And now for the woman, because this hurts us. This hurts us in such awful, complicated ways. It's probably why I focus so much of my frustration on us during this video, because my personal attachment to women embodying certain cruelty towards young innocence, and by young innocence I don't just mean children, towards any innocence that they envy is it's very close to home. I've seen it, I've felt it, and it's not good. At the end of the day, it hurts us. We need to stop using people. We need to stop weaponizing human innocence, something so invaluable, and exploiting it to ingratiate our victimhood. We need to wrestle in brutal, unforgiving effort with our hurts, with our pains, whatever they are, because we know that they are there, they have happened to us, to cure ourselves, to heal ourselves as victims. And yes, this is a responsibility. We need to stop lying to ourselves, to each other, that this is about some autonomy, that this is about feminism, that this is about some liberal agenda, because the truth is it isn't. The truth is far more selfish. We have dismantled, I think, not the abusive structures of moral order, because obviously those do exist. Abusive patriarchs aren't these superfluous imagined traumas. We felt them, we know them, but we can't afford to not wake up and see that we have gone a hop, a skip, and a whole damn cartwheel into delusion, and we have dismantled not just the abusive structures, but the rational ones. And we have done it out of fear of losing power and being dethroned. And finally, porn is making us all pawns. I'm so sorry. Like that was not planned, but yeah, porn is making us all pawns in somebody else's game, a game that we have no business being a part of, and everything to lose for it. But none of this is new. Look at the Victorian fathers who sold their daughters to brothels. Look at the families, the impoverished families of 19th century Japan, who handed their children over to geisha houses. The commodification of humanity, of innocence, and the purposelessness burdened to it has always followed the same formula: destroy the blameless to validate the broken. You know you've done something profoundly sick, something profoundly evil, when you can convince someone to become complicit in their own dehumanization. That is what I see happening here. Men and women turning themselves and each other into perpetrators. This is a war on innocence. This is a war on the blameless conscience. Because here's the truth. Here's my opinion. You, again, like I said, you do not have to agree with it, but this is where I stand. Excusing the degradation of yourself and another person under the lie, rather not even under the lie necessarily, because these ideas, progressive ideas, are not lies, but rather under the comfort of progressive thought, of feminist thought, of autonomous thought, doesn't make you free. It doesn't make you empowered. What it does do is chip away act by act. And I'm sorry to say it, but this is just genuinely how I felt looking at this story. It chips away act by act at the sacred property that distinguishes you as a human being from being animalistic. Here is the lie, and this bit is a lie. Here is the lie of self-exploitation. You will never be able to prostitute yourself in independence of somebody else's humanity. That is the lie of self-complicit degradation or consenting abuse. In prostituting yourself, you are in many ways accountable for exploiting some invaluable part of somebody else. And I didn't even think that I would have to say this, but we're not animals. I feel like I need to repeat that. We're not animals. Yes, we have biology. Yes, we have needs, but we are not driven mindlessly by our sexual appetites. And if we find ourselves in that vulnerable place where we are teetering towards that edge, we need not be. We can reclaim our control. We can reclaim our autonomy. We don't need to listen to them. So many people are being controlled So many people are being controlled by their victimhood. And I guess what I'm trying to say, what my final opinion on this is that we need not be. That is all I have to say. Thank you so much for joining me, but I would really love to know your opinions, divergent or otherwise. The comment section is, as always, open. Thank you for, sticking it till the end if that is what you decided to do. I know this was a long one, but I'll see you soon. You take care and goodbye.